Your balance is not your paycheck. Your account balance does not tell you what your retirement paycheck is going to look like. That number you see at the top, 300,000, 600,000, 900,000, it should be able to answer the question, can I retire? But it doesn't. A balance or an account balance is a snapshot, but a retirement paycheck is a system. It's going to depend on Social Security, taxes, healthcare, inflation, market timing, and how flexible your spending in retirement actually is. So let's translate what these three common balances can do for you in retirement, not as a guarantee, but as a practical planning framework. By the end, I'll give you a simple 3-step worksheet that you can use with your own Social Security estimates and your budget. Let's dive in. So why are 300,000, 600,000, 900,000 actually useful? These three numbers are useful because they represent three very different retirement conversations. At a $300,000 portfolio balance, your portfolio is often going to work best as a support system. It may fill gaps, help cover repairs, provide you with a cushion, but for many households at this asset level, Social Security has to carry a large part of the essential spending. So it's going to be critical that you get your Social Security claiming decisions right. At $600,000, the portfolio may become a more meaningful paycheck. It can create flexibility, help bridge a few years before you claim Social Security, or maybe even absorb some unexpected expenses. At $900,000, you may have even more optionality. You'll have room for reserves most likely. You want to think about some tax planning, maybe some Roth conversions, definitely Social Security timing, and you have some cushion in there for some uneven spending in retirement. But the same balance can mean very different things. A couple with two strong Social Security checks, a paid off mortgage, and a steady budget with a $600,000 balance may actually be in better shape than a couple with $900,000 portfolio, a mortgage, and some high fixed expenses. So the question is not, is this enough? A better question is, what do I actually need my money to do for me? Before we look at three different scenarios, let's set the table. First, Social Security. For many retirees, Social Security is the income floor. It covers most of your essential spending, and your portfolio has a much easier job. If it doesn't, your savings in your portfolio is going to have to work much, much harder. Second, we have to think about taxes. A $30,000 withdrawal from an IRA or 401k or 403b, any qualified retirement plan, is almost always going to be taxable as ordinary income. So it's not the same thing as $30,000 of actual spending power. Third, inflation. The same paycheck that feels great at 65 may feel tight at 75 if the plan does not adjust for inflation over time. Fourth is healthcare. Retiring before you're eligible for Medicare is a very different math equation than retiring after you're eligible for Medicare. And even after you're eligible for Medicare, there are many other factors that come into the equation. You have to think about Part B premiums, Part D premiums, inflation on costs that you may pay out of pocket. What do you want to do about dental, vision, long-term care? If you're a high income earner in retirement, you have to think about potential IRMA exposure with increasing those Medicare premiums. So there's a lot to think about, especially when it comes to healthcare in retirement. Fifth is housing and spending flexibility. A paid off home changes the equation significantly. This isn't to say that if you have a mortgage as you're going into your retirement years, that's a bad thing. We just have to factor that into your overall spending needs. And when you think about your spending plan, how flexible is your spending plan going to be? People that have very specific and rigid spending needs, they are going to have way less flexibility with what they need for their lifestyle than someone who is generally debt free and they have a lot of flexibility with their overall spending. So for illustration purposes, I'm going to use a very broad first year withdrawal range from 3.5% to 4.5%. That's not a promise, of course. It's just a planning range to help translate these balances into potential paychecks so you can see what type of purchasing power these portfolios may actually have for you in retirement. Let's start first with $300,000. Using that broad withdrawal range of 3.5% to 4.5%, you can see that starting out, a $300,000 portfolio might be able to support between $10,500 and $13,500 of first year gross withdrawals. That's about $875 to $1,125 of retirement paycheck by itself. In a strong scenario, we're planning that Social Security is going to cover a lot of the essential spending: housing, groceries, utilities, insurance, basic transportation needs, and then the portfolio steps in to fill the gap. It helps with property taxes and home repairs and medical bills, travel to see the family, or a modest lifestyle cushion. In a weaker scenario, Social Security may not actually cover the essentials, and now the portfolio is expected to step in and cover that gap. If you need $2,500 a month from a $300,000 account, well, that's roughly 30 grand a year, or 10% withdrawal rate before taxes. That may work for a short bridge, but it is a risky long-term spending plan. So at $300,000, the key question is, will the portfolio be supplementing retirement, or are you expecting the portfolio to actually help you carry your spending into retirement? If it's supplementing, it can be powerful and most likely can be done. If it is going to have to carry the spending, the margin for error gets really, really small. Now let's move to a $600,000 portfolio. Using that same planning range, $600,000 might support between $21,000 and $27,000 of first year gross withdrawals. That's roughly $1,750 to $2,250 per month before taxes. The biggest change here, in my view, is going to be flexibility. If Social Security can cover most of the basic spending or the essential expenses in retirement, then this portfolio may be able to support a more comfortable lifestyle with some travel, hobbies, home maintenance, helping your family replace a car without a lot of stress. It also opens up an idea for a bridge strategy. For example, if you plan to retire prior to your full retirement age, or you're planning to retire a little bit early before you claim Social Security, you might be able to use part of this portfolio to cover some spending and delay a Social Security paycheck. If you don't know this already, Social Security offers delayed retirement credits. So for every year that you don't claim your Social Security check, you do get a bump in those benefits. Obviously, if you claim prior to full retirement age, you have a reduced benefit. But even after full retirement age, if you wanted to delay, you continue to get about an 8% simple increase on those benefits to age 70. So you may want to think about, can this portfolio maybe give you a bridge strategy to help you defer a Social Security paycheck? This can be a very useful strategy, but you need to model it carefully and think about sequence of return risk and how you're actually investing the portfolio if you're planning to use it for a bridge strategy. Sequence risk means that the order of returns you receive early in retirement have a significant impact on the longevity potential for that portfolio. If you have really bad returns early in retirement, that could put a lot of constraints on the future or the longevity of that portfolio, because it takes a long time, or it could take a long time, for those assets to recover. At $600,000, the biggest mistake, in my view, is assuming the account can automatically create a large paycheck all by itself. In my opinion, I think it needs to be paired with a really good Social Security claiming strategy with some controlled fixed expenses. If spending expectations are too high, your plan can still be fragile. At $900,000, the picture, it changes again. Using the same broad range for withdrawal rates, a portfolio might be able to support between $31,500 to $40,500 of first year gross withdrawals. That is roughly $2,625 to $3,375 per month before taxes. This is where many people feel like they are close to $1 million, and that confidence can really help. but it also can lead to overconfidence. What a balance of $900,000 may actually provide is a lot of optionality. You may have more room to keep a cash reserve so that you're not forced to sell investments during any type of market downturn. You may be able to use some of those resources to delay or create an income bridge for Social Security. You may have room to do some Roth conversions if you have some lower income years, or if you do some strategic planning to do Roth conversions at a lower effective tax rate. You may even be able to create a bucket strategy where you divide your portfolio into some near-term spending, medium-term stability, and then have some assets dedicated for long-term growth. A portfolio of this size also gives you potential to have more room for uneven spending or uneven spending years. Many retirees like to spend early retirement years on travel and home projects because they know that this is their time to be the most active, and they want to make sure their home is set up. Especially if it's the home that they want to be in through their retirement, they want to make sure their home is set up and nice and something that they can enjoy. So they plan to spend a little bit more early in retirement and less later. And then obviously they have to think about potentially increasing healthcare costs as we get older. So $900,000 creates a lot of optionality, but a portfolio of this size still absolutely needs a plan. If most or all of this money is set aside in traditional 401ks or IRAs or qualified retirement plans, you have to consider taxes and how those withdrawals are going to be taxed and how they may impact tax on your Social Security. Increasing taxes in the future can definitely take a bite out of that spending power over time. So taxes become even more important when you have a larger portfolio balance like this. At this asset level, the biggest risk may not simply be running out of money. It could also include things like poor tax timing, inefficient withdrawals, too much risk, or lifestyle creep. Now let's put all three tiers side by side. At $300K, this is your gap filler, safety cushion. Every dollar matters. Your account type is also going to be critical. If Social Security doesn't cover your essential expenses, then you're going to have a lot of limited flexibility, in my view, asking the portfolio to possibly do too much. At $600,000, lifestyle support and a possible bridge tool. Taxes will become more meaningful, but moderate, especially with controlled fixed expenses. This could be quite doable. You still need to think about sequence of return risk, healthcare shocks, and potentially over withdrawals or overspending. At $900,000, we open up a lot more optionality and flexibility. You have the opportunity to have maybe more robust cash reserves, and you might want to start thinking about some tax planning or some proactive tax strategies. Tax timing can possibly even drive you to better outcomes over time. You have to think too about, higher potential tax rates in the future. One of the things you must consider though is don't let overconfidence start driving your decisions. You still need to have a plan, and you want to make sure that your plan works in a coordinated way. You don't want to just freestyle this because there's still a lot of risks that are present in retirement for people with a portfolio of this size. Here is probably the most critical point in my view. No matter where you are from a portfolio perspective, if the majority of your assets are in qualified plans or plans that are going to be taxed as ordinary income in retirement or when you make withdrawals, you have to understand that your gross withdrawals are not likely going to be the same as what you net. So your gross withdrawal isn't going to necessarily be your actual spending power. For example, if you withdraw $2,000 from a qualified plan, that $2,000 may not be what actually hits your checking account. If it is, I'm hoping that you're preparing or planning for taxes from somewhere else. If you are withdrawing from a Roth IRA, and of course, if you're playing by the rules for Roth IRAs, we know that those qualified Roth withdrawals are not taxable. So that may actually be your true spending power if you're making a withdrawal from a Roth. And then, of course, a taxable or a brokerage account, you may see a blended tax rate if some of that withdrawal is going to be dividends, interest, or some version of long short-term capital gains. This is why two retirees with the same $600,000 portfolio of assets may have two very different paychecks when you start thinking about taxes. So why does all of this even matter? In my view, your retirement income plan matters significantly more than whatever your headline balance is on your statement. The account balance, that number that you watch diligently, well, that's just raw material. That's just raw data. The plan, your income plan or your strategy, is what turns that balance into a sustainable paycheck in retirement. In my opinion, a good retirement income plan should answer at least 5 key questions. The first question is, what expenses should be covered or need to be covered no matter what? Number 2, which income sources or what income sources do I have to help me cover those expenses? What are my key floor income sources? Do I have Social Security, pension? What other resources do I have that I know that I can count on for actual paychecks? 3, if you have multiple different account types, what accounts do you want to withdraw from first or plan to withdraw from first, and why? 4, and this is a key one, what do I do if the market declines or drops early in my retirement years? Do you have a plan for sequence of return risk? 5, what expenses do I have that can be reduced temporarily without hurting my quality of life? In effect, how flexible is my overall spending plan or my lifestyle needs? If you can answer those questions, now the balance in your retirement accounts can become much more useful. Without answers to those questions, the balance may be giving you a false sense of precision. As I said earlier in the video, $300,000 can work in the right plan and under the right circumstances. $600,000 could be risky if you have the wrong spending plan. And then $900,000, it's a great balance. And a lot of people feel confident when they see that type of number. It can open up a lot of optionality and flexibility, but only if you have a plan for your withdrawals, your taxes, your reserves, and you understand how all of the pieces are going to be coordinated. At the beginning of this video, I talked about using a 3-step retirement worksheet that can help you work through some of these ideas. And so here is that 3-step worksheet that I would use. Step 1, build your income floor. Write down your essential monthly expenses, all of them. Housing, food, utilities, insurance, transportation, healthcare, taxes, basic personal spending. Then I want you to write down your reliable, consistent income. For most people, the core component of their floor of income in retirement is going to be Social Security. So if you have Social Security, put that in there. If you have a pension, I think you can put pension income in there as well. Me personally, I don't like to include things like rental income. And of course, most portfolio withdrawals are not going to immediately go into the floor category. We want consistent, reliable income sources. Now that you have both numbers, I want you to identify if there is a gap. What are your essential living needs? What do you need? And what are your income sources? If there is a gap between what you're going to need and your income sources, well, that gap is the first job of your savings, right? That's the gap that you have to cover. So step 2 is to think about your flexible spending. You may, and a lot of people like to do this, a lot of people want to include the flexible spending, things like travel, trips, hobbies, gifts, home projects, new vehicles, all these things into their essential living expenses. And in fact, in our office, this is one of the things we tell people all the time is truly that the lifestyle you think about in retirement includes a lot of these things that are actually flexible items, but most people don't think about them as flexible items because that's the actual lifestyle that they want to protect. But you want to have a good idea of what percentage of your lifestyle spending is actually flexible. That flexibility may help protect you or give you some options in bad market circumstances. Or once you identify those numbers, you may say, you know what? I want to protect this level of lifestyle also. And so truly my lifestyle or my essential lifestyle expenses are actually higher. So I might need my portfolio to do more, or I really might need to look at how do I create more of a floor for income in retirement. Now, step 3, if you have the ability to, you want to think about a tax efficient withdrawal order. There is no perfect sequence or withdrawal rules for everyone. There's lots of different rules of thumb out there on how to do this, but some years it may make sense to use taxable assets. Some years you may want to use more of your qualified retirement assets. And then if you have Roth, is the Roth going to be incorporated into, early withdrawals in retirement, or is it something you want to save for later to allow more time for tax-free growth in that account, and also to be a hedge maybe against potentially rising taxes in the future? One thing that I would stress, and this is, really where I've come down on it, is that in my view, when it comes to taxes, the goal is not to just minimize taxes this year. The goal is to minimize and manage your taxes through your lifetime. So there's a lot of people, when they think about taxes, it's always about, how do I pay the lowest possible amount this year? And I think that that is probably a faulty way to look at it. That's my view, but I think you need to think about minimizing or managing your tax exposure over your lifetime. So before you decide whether your number is enough or not, do this. Get your Social Security estimate and write down your real monthly budget. Separate those essential expenses from your flexible expenses. Yes, I know those flexible expenses may truly feel like you want them to be essential expenses, but this is a good exercise for you to see what you really need to live and then what you would like to have to live on, right? Then look at your portfolio and ask, what do I really need this money to do for me? Because your retirement number does matter, but again, your paycheck system matters even more. And the plan is what connects the two, right? So having a good balance, something that can give us confidence to retire, is amazing. But what really seals the deal and opens up those opportunities to really look at retirement differently is, what is your plan to create your retirement paycheck? Hey, if this video helped you think more clearly about your retirement income plan or what you're wanting to get out of retirement, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to this channel for more videos about retirement, retirement education, lifestyle, investing, all those cool things that we're going to cover on this channel. And hopefully this gave you some good food for thought. Always, 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 if you can, consult with a financial professional, somebody that can help you think through these things, because you get to retire one time in your life. You want to make sure you do it the right way so you can have the lifestyle that you deserve. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.